Rebecca. I am a PCO in the 21st LD, and I am here today with Rebecca Wolfe and Mary Rollins, both running for the Snohomish County PUD, and they will be on your ballot in November, and you can actually vote for both seats. Now, it's a really important election, a very great opportunity to make your voice heard, because this is 2 seats opening up on a 3-person board. Now, this commission sets rates and determines what energy we use and invest in. So doing your homework and making your voice heard this election is crucial. And honestly, this is the election where your vote can probably have the most impact, with the 2 people on a 3-person board. So today, Rebecca and Mary have been kind enough to get together with me so we can reach all of you guys who perhaps might not be home when we come out doorbelling, or maybe aren't able to make it to the forums. So we really appreciate your time today, and we're just going to really concisely hit some points that you're going to be able to walk away with, kind of understanding why these ladies are running and why a number of groups think that they're the best choice. Now, just some of the groups that have endorsed both candidates are the Washington Conservation Voters, the Sierra Club, the Snohomish County Democrats, and the 21st Legislative District Democrats. And so I am here today as a PCO, a precinct committee officer in the 21st, just asking these ladies some questions and getting you guys some answers. So, thank you ladies so much for being here today.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for taking the time.
Yeah.
Thank you for taking the time. So we're really excited. In Snohomish County, we are pretty good as far as, compared to the nation, as far as the kind of energy we use. We're 90% hydropower, and, the kind of technology that we invest in. So we're gonna have these ladies tell us why they're running and the difference that they think that they can make at the PUD. Rebecca, would you
Shall
like
I
to
start? Okay, thank you very much, Christina. I feel as if, coming from a background as an educator, my whole life has been preparing me for this position. 12 years ago, I worked on Initiative 937 for new jobs, good jobs, living wage jobs, clean energy, and a better environment for our future, our kids now and for the future. It was called the Clean Energy Petition, and we got it on the ballot, and we got it passed, and it was called the Energy Independence Act, and it's still in force until 2020, and the goal was to get at least 15% clean and new renewable energy, and new was a key word. You couldn't just keep doing more hydro. So no new hydro. It's possible, and it was allowed under the law to improve the old hydro, like the Jackson hydro plant and any other plants that we now own. But instead of going forward with that idea, our PUD, and if I could just say, one of the reasons I'm running is because I say on my flyer, I'm running because the status quo is no longer acceptable. And one of the things is to pursue old energy ideas from the 50s, 1950s and before. More hydro, because it's easy, because it's here. But people don't really think of the downsides of that. So there are a lot of things I'd like to get back to about what's wrong with the status quo today, and why I and Mary want to change the status quo. And both of our opponents are wanting to promote or continue the status quo.
Thank you so much.
Hi, thanks again. Hi, everybody. I am really running for this position because my heart is in a place where I want to work with the folks who have been really hurt the most by the rates with this PUD. My opponent has gone on record after he heard me talk about it as saying he wants to help the people. So I could see where, well, he says he wants to help, and Mary's saying she wants to help. How are they different? Well, for the last year, I've worked in social services, and I've worked on the ground with organizations that have actually been paying people's PUD bills. And So if they're paying people's PUD bills, what is the PUD doing? So my opponent would say that, well, the PUD is putting a couple of $1 million into helping ratepayers pay their bills that can't afford it. Well, I say maybe they're scratching the surface at 10% of the people that actually need help. The problem that we're looking at is like the top of an iceberg. And my opponent thinks that they're just doing a great job and everybody's on board and everybody wants to help. And when you call the PUD, that is what everybody says. But if you're outside the PUD, working with all these agencies, they are struggling and they are scrambling and they are trying to find any way they can to help people's lives be better by keeping their power on. And they tell me that when they go to the PUD asking for help, their door is shut to them. About a year ago, all these people that help the different folks were brought into a room and we were actually talked to. We're saying, well, this is what the PUD is going to do. We weren't asked, how can we change the system? How can we systemically bring up everybody, like lift all boats? But we were talked to instead. And so as on the other parts of the PUD, I'm really on board with energy and all of that. But I also want to be that voice on the PUD that finally cares about the little guy.
That is wonderful. Thank you so much.
May I ask her a question about
Yes.
that?
Sure.
Is most of that money, since you're an expert in that area, is most of that money federal or does it come from our pockets here in the PUD?
There's a mix, there's a combination. Some of it's federal, but some of it is within the state, within the counties, within the cities. So if you're talking about the people that are helping the PUD, is that what you're talking about, or what the PUD spends?
No, I would like to know in our own budget, in our own different categories of budgets, is it our PUD money that's coming from the ratepayers and?
Some of it.
Okay,
Some of it
just-
is, yes.
yeah.
And some of it, like you'll see a little sign that says you want to sign because you want to help somebody else out.
Okay.
So you check a box. So some of it's from that, yeah.
Very nice. Okay. And Rebecca, I see that you're really trying to get into the financial, operational aspect of things. Could you tell people a little bit about your background managing nonprofits, managing the financials of those nonprofits, and why you think that you would be able to manage a $660 million budget?
Well, let me just start by saying if we want to increase the amount of money that we have to work with, we have to stop wasting millions. And so I'd like to just speak about that for a minute.
Thank you.
So when the people of the Sunset Falls area, up the highway to Snohomish Valley, gave their well-researched reasons to the PUD about why they should not put a dam there, they ignored them completely and went ahead and spent $10 million on that project. They bought a lot of land, they put in a $500,000 bridge across the Snohomish and the South Fork of the Snohomish. And so they plunged ahead because they had people in charge, general manager and others, who said, no, we are going to put a dam there regardless. And then, even though they cannot use any new dams for renewable energy credits, they built 2 more dams at Callaghan and Hancock Creeks, which is north of Snoqualmie Falls. And even though there are no endangered fish there, it's just, why do more and more? And I noticed that they had a recent expenditure of $400,000 to stabilize the land where one of those is built. I forget whether it was Hancock or Callaghan, but they had—
Already?
Yes.
Wow.
$400,000 to stabilize that land. So it's just money after money, you know.
That sounds like the kind of thing that could greatly impact property values.
Yes.
And I think that that's so unfortunate that our public utility didn't do the due diligence and didn't have the foresight to, I know you talk a lot about transformational versus transactional leadership. And I'm wondering if you could just talk a little bit about 1631. I know that your opponent thinks that the imperfections outweigh the benefits, and I'd like to hear what you think.
Thanks a lot for that. So Sally Jewell, former executive director of REI, and William Ruckelshaus, who was head of the EPA, good man, they have come out today, or yesterday, in the Seattle Times with a long editorial about why we should support 1631.
Oh,
On the
right.
other side is the CEO of Shell Oil.
Shell.
And they're
Interesting.
I think maybe your opponent had something, anyway.
That's correct.
Um,
Petrochem engineering.
So most of the money to finance the anti-1631 ads are coming from the petroleum industry.
That's wonderful to know.
Yeah,
Thank you
it's
for making
really,
that point.
really important. And on the other side, we have people like you and me out there banging on doors, asking for contributions, and we got the signatures, 350,000 or more, on the ballot, to get it on the ballot. And now we're up for-
Congratulations.
And now we have to, as we did in 2006, we need to get a new energy bill. It's an even more comprehensive bill than 937, but we have had to fight the PUD to protect I-937. They want to go around the law, talk ecology into, for example, lowering the required stream flows, so they can put their, new dams on that. And they've done all kinds of things, working with
They want
fish-
more dams?
Huh?
They want more dams?
Of course, they do. It's easy. And yet they don't think about what it's going to do, what's going to happen with climate change 40 years from now, when we'll have no more glaciers and the streams will be lower, and we'll have more fires, which is going to really have an impact on the water.
I think it goes back to what you were saying about being a transformational leader, is that you're looking out into the future. You're seeing, we are in a climate disaster. We're at over 410 parts per billion, right? Per million. It was supposed to be 350 is where we could sustain life here. We're up over 400. So right now, with what Rebecca's talking about, this transformational change, looking down the road and seeing how that's going to affect our future's future, not just putting money in our pocket today. And I think for at least the last 24 years of the incumbent, who is now out of the race completely, she got voted out finally because people were starting to see what people like Rebecca and I have seen for a long time, is that they're living in this moment of how can we enrich ourselves, how can we make our pocketbooks bigger without thinking about the future and how that's going to affect our kids. I mean, I have a teenager right now. I worry for her future.
This is so great. And okay, I just really briefly want to touch on, Mary, you have a master's degree in policy. Okay, and so if we're looking at 1631, I know that one of the drawbacks with it is the largest polluters in our state are not included in the fees on the carbon production. Now, obviously, that is a transactional choice that is going to, one, hinder the positive benefits of 1631 in total. Two, if you want to talk about free markets, this is an artificial government-created barrier that protects incumbent industry, okay? So this is not free market, keeping the big polluters out of it. So Mary, I'd really like to see if you could just a little bit kind of wrap our heads around what you could do for us as we see the current PUD seems to have a lot of great ideas and a lot of programs that they want to get started and such, but they seem to just, sometimes maybe not be, operational or maybe being taken advantage of as much as possible, like the solar buyback right now. So with Rebecca's huge focus on energy efficiency, on just using less energy, could you talk to us about, with your knowledge and policy and the idea of the big polluters and energy efficiency, how maybe we could, steer the conversation towards energy efficiency, perhaps and actually get it done, actually have the rubber meet the road and have the hard work happen of it happening year in, year out.
And I want to speak
So-
to that after her.
Right, well,
That's why you guys make a good team.
right, so what I look at 1631 is put your foot in the door, you're holding that door open now. If you have people on the PUD board, such as Rebecca and I, that can actually see the long view, then we can start to steer policy. And once that, and this is what the oil companies are so afraid of, is getting that foot in the door and starting that process. They are so scared that it might actually happen, that they will actually have to be held accountable. And that's where once people see that this is working, then we can start to bring all these other folks on board who have been able to opt out of this in order to just get it passed. But you have to be able to start the process somewhere. And go ahead.
So what I want to add to that is that just like our U.S. Congress, our state legislature can do pretty much what they want to with new laws, amending laws, tweaking them, making them better. They could go in and they could decide, okay, instead of putting so many millions into that, we want to do that instead. Instead of excluding these companies, maybe we want to make it maybe a smaller fee on them, but a fee, and every year it increases a little bit, so that they can transform their own companies to be more energy efficient and demand less.
And that's really
Right.
what the international
So,
economy requires.
So I
really.
wouldn't fail to back it just because it's not perfect. And
Right.
as Sally Jewell and Mr. Ruckelshaus have said, we cannot wait. And that international panel of climate scientists connected to the United Nations, they have said today, 10 years at the most, we have 10 years at the most to reverse this climate warming trend. Or it's going to be out of control. So we back that. We are not saying put it off until it can be improved, or and we're not saying that the oil companies should be let off the hook for this. They can help us. They can change their own market strategies to more clean and renewable, which some of them are doing.
Right, even the car companies that have electric cars, they admit themselves that they don't market them because they don't think there's enough of a market, because there's not enough of a market because they don't market them, right? Right?
Oh, boy.
Look at the PUD itself. The PUD building does not have anywhere to plug in an electric car. How backwards is that? That is ridiculous.
And I know you've talked as well about just the simple efficiency that comes from having fully inflated tires.
That's
So
right.
if you could imagine the pair at the PUD for free, or what have the air for free, at least, like free air.
That's right.
I'd like to mention the Northwest Energy Council. It's a .org. It's a nonprofit, and their big push is toward electric cars. That's one. And so when Volkswagen had to pay, wasn't it Volkswagen that had to pay a huge fine for monkeying with the pollution equipment? A lot of that money has gone to help the state and organizations like Northwest Council to encourage more electric cars. And then for that, of course, we have to have more storage, and that's another story which we may want to get into.
That is another story, and we won't get into that right now, but there is obviously tremendous opportunity for jobs and being more competitive worldwide by investing in science, technology, engineering, math at the academic level. So you guys, I think that this is tremendously helpful, I would say. So Rebecca, you are running for position 2.
Right.
And this is a 6-year term. And Mary, you are running for position 1, and that is to finish out 2 years of a term that is currently going on. Before we sign off, I'd love to give you guys the opportunity, if you feel like we haven't covered anything, or to just really give the voters your what you feel is your biggest opportunity to impact the PUD.
Great.
Well, I don't think we've mentioned it, but my master, I went back to school in 2015 and completed an 18-month program in environmental law and policy.
Oh, that's
And
huge.
the whole program was centered on climate change and the impacts of our laws and our government. And we did a lot of review of how agencies work and how rulemaking happens in agencies, how they come up with, it was a very good, it's #1 in the US for energy law and policy.
Wow.
And, yes, and I worked hard and I graduated summa cum laude. And I was
Very
really
nice.
proud of that because it was so close to my heart. Everything I studied, I loved it. And when you love what you're doing like that, you can really make a difference. And from Gonzaga in the organizational leadership program, the PhD program, we did focus on how to be a transformational leader. And I want to help, and I know Mary does too, we want to help transform. Can't do it alone. We have 1,000 employees. We have great staff, most of them as far as I know. And we want to help transform this into an organization which listens to the ratepayers, because actually it's a public utility, and we shouldn't be just always trying to see where can we make more profit. We need to look at our business plan and see, okay, so are we putting our money for the future, or are we just, trying to have another little project that could take millions? And so we've spent $70 million on the 3 new dams, one of which they dropped because of the sovereignty rights of the Tulalip people, who said, this is not going to work for us, we're out of it, we're not continuing. And so I think that was really the reason, although Mary's opponent kind of takes credit for voting against the Sunset Falls project. It was going to be shut down anyway. People I know who were inside on that process said it was the Tulalips, really, who caused it. And they were spending so much money that they couldn't justify. And I just want to speak for the people, the Savina, the Snohomish Valley Economic and Environmental Alliance, Savina. Those people are very intelligent and very well educated, and they're not just saying we're against it. For this reason, they're also trying to protect forests and other things and develop the economy of the Snohomish Valley. So anyway,
Wow. I'm glad you covered that.
there's a lot I would like to talk about. I don't know how much time we have left, but I'm really concerned about the status quo.
I would like you to talk a little
Yeah.
bit more about energy efficiency before
Oh,
we
sure.
go,
Oh,
please.
yes.
Okay, so one thing that I wanted to bring up is that this is a 3-person board. So we had an opportunity in the last 6 years and 6 years before that to bring in an environmentalist who had that long view, and he was not elected. So we ended up with the 2-to-1 split again. All of the votes to continue the status quo were going with the 2 people that were in there. So now we have another opportunity to get rid of that status quo by hiring us. Basically, you're hiring us. This election is saying, we believe you to help us, look down the road and do the best possible things for our
And
future.
get the most out of these programs.
Well, but the other thing I really want to say is that I think this 3-person board is way too small for the size of Snohomish County. And you can see what happened the other day when they installed the new CEO with a 10-year contract. These 3 people saying yes, yes, yes. It wouldn't have hurt my opponent to even say no, because it wouldn't have mattered, because his no vote wouldn't have counted. If he is that much not for the status quo, why didn't he stand up and say, hey, you had a room full of people here that said, why don't you just wait? Wait till the new board is installed. All he had to do was vote no, but he didn't.
Or he could have
Or
abstained.
abstain, but he didn't.
No,
We need somebody to take a stand, and we really do need somebody up there. I was at that meeting. It really felt awful for a room full of people to have taken time out of their weekday to show up and express concern. And I mean, the reaction from the commission was that we were a nuisance, we were a bother,
Yes.
and that they knew better. And so when you have ladies like this who are educated on the issues and who can speak to the investments that have been made and the questions that are coming down the road, I think it's tremendously unfortunate that those voices aren't heard, much less this being a public utility. But these ladies are more than qualified and more than have their heart, more than anybody have their heart in the right place. So this truly is a moment for us to pivot as far as the PUD. And I would like to just finish on a note of, you know, if we are looking ahead, just real quick, Rebecca, if you could kind of just give people an idea of the power of energy efficiency, you know, just the fact that, you know, the International Energy Association says that it is the biggest source of energy that any country has, purely because we really haven't been thinking about using it as smartly as possible. So, Rebecca, thank you.
So, not to get into too many acronyms here, but I'll just say the northwestcouncil.org, nwcouncil.org, go there if you have time, if you're interested in going really in depth, and read their 7th power plan. They have a diagram in the executive summary that shows that the thing we need to do between now and 2035 is energy efficiency, major, serious, significant energy efficiency. Now, what could that look like? Well, right now, there are so many new ways coming. You know, we, of course, solar and distributed solar on our own homes, which I think if we were on the council, we would find ways to provide incentives in our own PUD. I know when Eric Teagarden ran 12 years ago, it was 12, right? 12 years ago.
He ran twice.
He had calculated, and he was an engineer, mathematician, STEM kind of guy. And he said that the 7 million, at that time it was 7 million that they had spent, he said it would provide solar for 17,000 homes.
Right.
In the PUD area.
Right.
So we need to get serious. It's our 2nd largest resource after hydro is energy efficiency.
Wow.
And there's so many new ideas. And if people are interested in this, another great website, and I have this on my own website, which is Wolfe for goodenergypud.com. If they go there, I have some links to other articles about nuclear energy, hydropower, energy efficiency, and what's the other one? Solar. You know, all these different kinds of energy. And I just think that we're just on the cusp of a lot of new things that are coming.
That's right.
And there's an organization called the ACEEE, and that's another nonprofit, American Council for Energy and Environmental Efficiency, ACEEE. So look at these websites and get back to us, and we can tell you a whole lot more.
Well, I also wanted to mention, and I really appreciate all of your in-depth knowledge. My knowledge, of course, and I've stated, has been around the ratepayers themselves who are struggling. But I also wanted to bring up something else that, and a lot of people don't know this, like I was talking about inflating the tires. I mean, these are simple things we can do, but one of the things that is the highest user of energy is producing food. And we happen to throw away half of what we produce. So just kind of trying to think outside the box a little bit and informing ratepayers of things that we can do on small scales, on larger scales, on citywide, on countywide scales to preserve our energy.
That's that policy degree talking.
That's right.
You're
That's
saying
exactly.
break it down into, you know, manageable things that will actually make a difference over time. Mary, how can we put the public back in the public utility district?
Well, so that's kind of what I'm running on, to put a public face, to put a human face back onto the public utility. I have a child who is disabled, and he's almost 36 years old. He is fed by a pump that is electric. So it's really important to me to have my electricity on so that his feeding pump can work all the time. I have talked to folks who have children who are on other devices that help them stay alive. And sometimes those costs of running the electricity get so high, and they've come to the PUD and said, can we get a break on our utility bill? And they've been told no, without any really good justification. I have some elderly people who are on a fixed income. Their rates for their rents are going up, and they could really use another help with their PUD bill. but they've already been given help because they're on a fixed income, so there's no wiggle room there for them. And I think that if we can really have a group, bring in all the stakeholders, and talk about how we can once again revive that sense of community that started the PUD back in the early 30s, and it was a sense of pride for the citizens of Snohomish County to have this public utility district. If we can grab some stakeholders, come together and see how can we reinvigorate that pride and give the people what is theirs to begin with, right? That's where I live, and I'm very sincere about that.
That is absolutely wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you so
So
much.
I can just add to that I think what I want to do, and I'm sure Mary does too, is restore trust in the PUD. They need to be trustworthy, and right now, and for the last 12 years that, you know, that I've been watching them, they have not been. And that's very disturbing to me. So I work with a group called Our Children's Trust, and they are trying to get our government to do the right thing to protect the atmosphere for them, because they're a special class. They're going to be here long after I am, and some of us are. I mean, in 60 years, what kind of future are they going to have? And I think our educators who work in the PUD as educators for the PUD, when they go into the classrooms, they need to be talking about the good ways of what I call good energy, not more nuclear, or at least not the kind of nuclear we have now, and not just more and more hydro with climate change coming. And so there's that, but I also want our employees to be able to trust the PUD. And I want the PUD to trust their employees. And so recently with the hiring of the new manager, you know, it seemed as if the commissioners were trying to paint us as the bad guy against the employees, and that is completely false. I mean, we are for the employees. They are the key to getting the work done out there when we have a storm and days without power and that sort of thing. And we shouldn't have to all go out and buy generators to have, I know in my neighborhood, right next door, I'm in a more affluent neighborhood, people are buying generators so they can have their backup. Well, a lot of us don't want to go out and spend several $1,000s on generators. We want our PUD, we want to be able to trust our PUD. So thank you for all of your effort on getting us together here and putting this together.
This is so great.
Yeah, I just want to say this, energy, you know, we talk about the grid. Well, there's a grid, and then there's grids inside the grids inside the grids of knowledge. And I think between Rebecca and I, we have a solid knowledge of how to be a public utility that's strong, that's forward-looking, and that it cares about our own
I'm so excited. Okay, I could not be more excited. All right, you guys, so on your ballots, you will have Rebecca Wolfe for position 2, Mary Rollins for position 1. Most importantly of all, everybody in Snohomish County can vote for both positions, okay? So everybody has the opportunity to have their voice heard on these 2 seats on a 3-person board. So I just couldn't appreciate your time more in letting us discuss with you how the PUD could be better and how these ladies think that, how these women know that they can get us there. And I would just like to tie this up by saying, you know, that conservation is conservative, and a vote for Rollins and Wolfe is a vote for financially and policy sound governing that is focused on the long term, and we couldn't appreciate your consideration more. Thank you so much. Thank you guys so much.
And I hope people will forward this video to others.
I hope so too. Like and share. I'm Christina Melnichenko. I am a precinct committee officer in the 21st Legislative District in Washington State, and I produced this video.